This is Newstalk ZB News.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Wendy Petrie. 501s will be the hot topic in Chris Luxon's meeting in Canberra today with the Australian Prime Minister. Anthony Albanese's government has pulled a recent U-turn on the common sense approach he'd agreed to with former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern in 2022. Australia is no longer considering a person's ties to the country before deporting them, making the safety of Australians the top priority. Geopolitical analyst Jeffrey Miller told Ryan Bridge Luxon's comments in Sydney yesterday hinted he wasn't expecting to make much headway.
He basically said they were going to agree to disagree on this issue, but he would continue to voice New Zealand's displeasure.
News and views you trust to start your day. It's Early Edition with Ryan Bridge, Newstalk ZB.
13 minutes after 5 on Newstalk ZB.
Ryan Bridge.
Right now, Luxon is going, well, not right now, but later today, Luxon's going to meet with Albanese in Canberra. The topics, the usual suspects, Aukus, the refugee deal, the economy and the 501s.
Well, I've raised it certainly at the last meeting, and we certainly have raised it subsequent to the change to the ministerial directive that's been announced here domestically, and we'll continue to advocate very strongly for it.
Jeffrey Miller is an international geopolitical analyst. He's with us this morning. Jeffrey, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
The Aussies have changed their mind on the 501 thing twice already. Do you reckon Luxon can make it a third?
I don't think so. I don't think he's going to make much headway with Anthony Albanese on this. The government over there has been under a lot of pressure from the opposition to take a more hardline stance, and they actually changed their immigration minister a few weeks ago. So they've now got someone who's from the right of the party, Tony Burke, who's the minister over there, and I think he's going to deport New Zealanders if and when he wants to. And so I don't think Christopher Luxon is really going to make much progress there. And he hinted at that last night when he spoke to the Lowy Institute in Sydney in the Q&A. He basically said that they were going to agree to disagree on this issue, but he would continue to voice New Zealand's displeasure. And I think that's perhaps all he really can do, and he can simply hope that while Australia might engage in a lot of tough talk on this issue, they might show a bit of pragmatism towards New Zealand, given that Christopher Luxon is really seeking to align himself with Australia quite strongly on wider foreign policy issues.
Yeah. They've also got an election coming up, right? They're hardly going to bend over to us right before they've got an election. As you say, just changed the immigration minister. That speech you mentioned at the Lowy Institute, he said, this is Luxon, his big first foreign affairs outing, that we are deliberately deepening our relationship with Five Eyes partners. Is that a bad thing?
Well, look, it was a very hawkish speech that he gave last night, and the Q&A, it was also very revealing. He said that he wanted New Zealand to be a force multiplier for Australia, and he called the independent foreign policy approach that New Zealand has taken for the last 4 decades almost, he called that a nonsense. So it was very, very strong. He said he was very, very aligned with Anthony Albanese, and yes, I mean, it was very clear what the direction of travel is going to be under Christopher Luxon. I think it will be music to Canberra's ears, music to Anthony Albanese's ears, but it could put New Zealand on a collision course with China.
He said New Zealanders sometimes perceive themselves as buffered by splendid isolation, but there is no opting out from today's strategic realities. The world is getting more difficult and more complex, particularly so for those smaller states navigating increasingly stormy seas. New Zealand too must be a participant and a contributor, not an interested bystander. Does he have a point?
Look, I think New Zealand should be more involved in the world, but it's exactly how you do it is the question. And Christopher Luxon's recipe seems to be taking a much more hawkish stance, to be aligning itself and to be aligning New Zealand very much with Five Eyes partners like Australia, like the United States. And that's a line we've heard very consistently from Winston Peters, the foreign minister, over the last 9 months. But it will represent quite a sea change for New Zealand's foreign policy to be moving away from the independent foreign policy towards becoming a de facto alliance member again in the Western Alliance. He's said that New Zealand's continuing to explore Aukus. It sounds like decisions are being put on hold pending the outcome of the US elections in November, but it's very much still in the mix. whether New Zealand joins Aukus Pillar 2. We've been told that for quite some time, but I think it is coming, some of these big decisions, and it really will be quite a change to New Zealand's foreign policy positioning.
It will, and the way he's talking, I mean, you feel like you're being butted up for it, almost, don't you? Jeffrey, thank you very much for your time and your analysis this morning. Jeffrey Miller, international geopolitical analyst. Luxon meeting with Albanese in Canberra today. He was in Sydney yesterday.